you like losing your rights to tyranny? Just asking. Get unbound. Unbound Radio.
And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people. Literally, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people.
The smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight.
If you embark on instituting a society where government protects you from yourself, you're in big trouble, and that's what they're doing. That's all government is force. I mean, do you have a choice about paying Medicare taxes? This government uses force to mold behavior. Or
welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Freedom Link right here on Unbound Radio. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Johnny King. Johnny boy, how you doing this fine evening?
Absolutely fantastic, Joe. I've got my steel-toe work boots on, and I'm ready to kick Uncle Tyrant in the cojones.
Uncle Tyrant in the cojones, indeed. Folks, tonight we have a very, very special guest. Our guest tonight is Michael Snyder from the economiccollapseblog.com. I'm sure many of our listeners here, you guys, at least once a week know that I'm always referencing his material. As far as, especially when it comes to the economy, a very, very good resource for the economy. That's the economiccollapseblog.com. And you may be interested to know that he's also dabbling in writing. He's wrote his first novel, and the novel is called The Beginning of the End. And a fascinating fiction book that kind of, I guess you'd say the second coming of like Brave New World, if you will, kind of taking that fiction stance, but giving relevant information and making it enticing to people who wouldn't normally go after something that's a little more hard, like the truth. So welcome, Michael, to the broadcast. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you. It's such a privilege to be on, and I'm so excited about what you guys are doing and the audience that you're reaching already, and with the promise of growth ahead. So I'm excited to be a guest with you guys and to see where you guys are headed with this thing.
It's Michael, I have to say that I was given a little bit. I perked up, I guess you could say, this weekend, and that was by President Obama as he was addressing the Ohio State University graduates at the commencement of Ohio State, and he tells people, why, reject the voices that warn about government tyranny. Don't believe them. Come on, The fact that he had to acknowledge that, Michael, was huge, because it certainly not only gives us in the independent media relevance, but it speaks volumes as to our efforts, and that we are making a difference to the point now where they have to recognize and address it. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I totally agree. And nothing that Obama ever says is by accident. It's always very highly scripted. So the fact that he's addressing this, and the fact that he's addressing it to a group of young people, these were college graduates at Ohio State.
Right.
It's particularly the young people that are waking up to things like the Federal Reserve, to the government tyranny, how they're attacking our constitutional rights. So the awakening that's taking place right now all over the country is primarily centered in our young people, and I think it's particularly noteworthy that Obama chose to direct these comments to an audience of young people.
Yeah, hold that thought. When we come back, folks, much more with Michael Snyder of the economiccollapseblog.com as we dive into different subjects From the economy to Syria. We'll be right back after these messages.
For hundreds of years, an elite group of oligarchs have ruled the land, fueled by a legacy of sex, money, power, and greed. In the last 60 years, their power has become more consolidated as they have become more organized. Their very own white papers and other documents show the diabolic plans they have in store for the population. Shade the Motion Picture, an Ambellis and Burmis film, featuring Shepard Ambellis, Jason Burmis, Alex Jones, Clyde Lewis, Webster Tarpley, Jordan Maxwell, Rosalind Peterson, Michael Murphy, reggae artist Skoll, Luke Radowski, Servano Gonzalez, and more. Buy your copy of Shade the Motion Picture DVD right now at shadethemotionpicture.com.
Do you like losing your rights to tyranny? Just asking. Get unbound. Unbound Radio.
After my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without pride, now I want to understand. I have done all that I could.
Folks, don't forget to check out the Unbound Radio website, www.unboundradio.com. Read through some of our exclusive articles, wander through our vast show archives, purchase a membership and gain access to a secure chat and CD quality archives. Last but not least, check out our many valued sponsors as well. Unbound Radio, your source for truth in a society of lies. Joe Joseph here, along with John King, our special guest, Michael Snyder of the economiccollapseblog.com. Go to Amazon.com today and purchase his new ebook. It's in ebook format right now, The Beginning of the End. Michael, what prompted you to go into fiction writing?
Well, for years I've been on the Economic Collapse blog and on my other websites. I've been doing these articles that they're mostly news-based articles, and they have a lot of facts and figures and statistics, and people have really responded to that, and they said, a lot of people have written to me, and they said, hey, you should write a book, but I didn't just want to rehash everything I've already done on my websites. But then I got to thinking about it, and eventually I came to the conclusion, wouldn't it be great to kind of put together in a story format where I think the country is headed, kind of about the future of America. And that's what this novel's about. How I see kind of the economic collapse that I believe is unfolding, where it's going to take us. So I've tried to do it in a format that's entertaining, that people enjoy. It's a mystery, it's a thriller. But in it, I've also included all kinds of nuggets of truth about the economy, about the New World Order, about all those kind of things. But hopefully it's in an entertaining package that people in our entertainment-addicted society can relate to, where they'll pick it up. And maybe it's people that would never even come to my website, but people can give them a book. They'll read it and say, wow, this is entertaining, but at the same time they're getting truth downloaded into them, and hopefully it'll wake some more people up. So didn't want to just preach to the choir, but hopefully it can be used, people can use it as a tool to help wake some more people up.
Watch John King, in about 40, 50 years, they'll be saying, why that Michael Snyder, Aldous Huxley, eat your heart out.
Well, I'm just hoping to do my own little part because, we're all working together. And, because I can't do a radio show like you guys do, and other people do street protests, or other people put up YouTube videos that just blow me away. And I wish I could do YouTube videos like they do. But they're just so talented at that. So everyone has a talent, and my talent just happens to be writing, and so that's how I try to contribute.
No, fantastic, Michael. And you do a splendid job. And I have to say, your stuff gets out there, on sites like InfoWars, on Unbound Radio, and the like. It's picked up everywhere and mirrored. So hats off to you there for making a difference. And what a way to get the word out by, writing something that appeals to the entertainment-addicted masses in a way that can, oh, wow, imagine if that did happen. And then the next thing you know, they're watching the news and, oh, wow, where have I heard this before? You know, and then it all kind of comes together and snap. Uh-oh, they're awake now. Oh, boy. And their life changes forever. And speaking of life changing forever, the Israel and Syria situation seems to be getting worse. And, of course, Syria being allies of Russia and Iran, and Israel, of course, being the ally of the United States. And things seem to get more hairy by the day. You just did a piece on your website entitled, "What Would War Between Israel and Syria Do to the Already Fragile Global Economy?" Michael, what would that do in your eyes? How would that destabilize the already fragile global economy?
Well, right now we've got a global economy which is already on the verge of disaster. We've got all this bad economic data which has just come out of China, and then of course over in Europe we've got unemployment in Greece and Spain sitting about 27%. Unemployment in the Eurozone as a whole is at an all-time high. So things are very, very fragile right now. And then, you know, if a regional war to erupt in the Middle East, you know, it could be disastrous because, for example, let's say, you know, a war erupted between Israel and Syria. Well, that's going to almost certainly draw in Hezbollah, Hamas, and then very likely we could see potentially even Iran get involved, or maybe Egypt or Jordan. You know, it could spiral out of control very, very quickly. And it wouldn't be like the next major regional war over there is probably not going to be like 1967 or 1973. The weapons have just gotten so much more advanced, so much more powerful, and all the countries of the region, they've become so much more advanced. So I fear that the next great regional war over there, that we're going to see death on an unprecedented scale, that it's just going to be horrible. And if that happens, well, the first thing that's going to do is it's going to greatly restrict the flow of oil out of the entire region, and that would have certainly consequences for the global economy. But also, it would create an atmosphere of fear. We would see markets all over the world instantly drop, and already there's a lot of fear in financial markets. So anything that kind of pushes it over the edge, any type of black swan event that comes along, that's unexpected, that's dramatic, that can kind of push things over the edge, you know, it could really push us into some bad times very, very quickly.
Especially when you see the market being the way it is and being as inflated as it is right now. I mean, do you see the market as this massive bubble that's ready to pop?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the Dow soared over 15,000 today, but it's totally divorced from economic reality. In fact, I just wrote an article today about all the other economic indicators that are pointing toward recession, not toward good times like the stock market kind of is. You know, for example, you look at the price of copper. You know, many economists refer to copper as Dr. Copper because it's such a good indicator of future of where the U.S. economy is headed. And copper so far this year is down, you know, close to 20%, and that normally indicates recession. And normally the stock market mirrors that pretty closely, but right now the stock market's divorced from that. Or if you look at home renovation spending, it's fallen back to the levels that we haven't seen since 3 years ago, back during the depths of the last crisis. Or retail spending. Retail spending is repeating a pattern that we have not seen since the depths of the last recession. Also, manufacturing activity is down. Chicago PMI has dipped below 50 for the first time since the last recession. Consumer confidence unexpectedly fell to a 9-month low in April. And then we've got things like casino spending. Casino spending, a lot of people say, well, what does casino spending have to do with anything? It actually is a very good measurement of how the overall economy is performing. When the economy is doing well, casino spending's up. When the economy is doing poorly, casino spending falls. And in fact, now casino spending has fallen to a level that we've not seen since the last recession. So there's all these indications that difficult times are coming in the months ahead. But meanwhile, the stock market is just flying out of control. But of course, a bubble is always the largest right before it bursts. And when there is a correction, when the stock market corrects and catches up with economic reality, it often happens very, very rapidly. And that could potentially mean a crash.
Yeah, now, John King here, he's, John, you've experienced that with silver, right? Because John King is big into precious metals. And John, you've experienced that with silver, the big drop in silver, haven't you?
Oh, yes, Joe. I am now sitting on a inflated donut.
Now on the flip side, my brother just came back from Vegas. He went to Vegas for a couple of days, and when he came back, he says, "Wow, man, Vegas is booming." Now this is the thing that I've always seen, and I don't maybe it bucks a trend. The lottery. I've always seen, like, and not so much gambling on in Vegas and Atlantic City, but the lottery. Have you ever done any research into how the lottery spending is from good times to bad times? Does that keep with the trend of, in good times people spend more money on the lottery or whatever? Because I'll tell you what, when you go into, the 7-Eleven or whatever, the lines for the lottery now are jammed, whereas before they kind of weren't, What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I tend to agree on that. And one way this is manifesting is if you look at the stock market, margin debt on the New York Stock Exchange. That's just another form of gambling where people are becoming incredibly leveraged. They're going wild with margin debt. It tends to spike just before we see the stock market decline dramatically. It happened right before the recession of 2002. It happened right before the huge stock market crash of 2008, and it's happening again. In fact, I'm looking at a chart right now where there are 3 dramatic spikes, and this is the third time it's happening. So it's not only gambling like you're talking about in the lottery, but gambling in the financial markets where people get out of control, they get caught up in the euphoria, and they just go crazy, and then it crashes.
It's funny you say that because I was reading the Sydney Morning Herald had a piece, $1 billion bet on rate cut pays off, and that had to do with George Soros, who made $19 million in profit in about 36 hours. And it says, it may go down as one of the greatest currency bets in Australian dollar history. A $1 billion gamble on a reserve bank cut that delivered a $19 million profit in 36 hours to George Soros. So these guys, they do that all the time. They're betting on these rate cuts. To me, the market seems to be nothing more than like Vegas on steroids. I don't. What do you think about that?
Oh, I completely agree, and this is one of the primary things that I warn people about, because what we've told Wall Street, the message we sent to Wall Street is this: go ahead and make wild bets, leverage everything to the hilt, go crazy. If you win big, you're going to become fabulously wealthy. If you lose, that we're going to bail you out, either through the U.S. taxpayers are going to bail you out, or, as we saw in Cyprus recently, they're just going to go and directly grab bank accounts. But one way or another, we're not going to let the biggest banks fail. We're going to bail them out. So the downside is limited, but the upside is tremendous. So it provides a perverse incentive for these bankers to go out and just go wild with their gambling.
It's funny you say that, because it's always to the detriment of Joe Schmuckatelli American. You know what I mean? Or just the common folk, the commoner. That we're always the one that either has to pick up the bill, or we're always the one that gets the shaft when it comes to their bets. Whether it comes to, all of a sudden, poof, like with MF Global, goodbye retirement account. You know what I mean? It's all gone. These bets that go down, Michael, I mean, they never end up really losing in the long run. It's just like the banks, Oh, well, that's what derivatives are for. We'll just go ahead.
I was just going to say that's very true. And derivatives is a key word, and that's a key word that I'm encouraging people to listen for. Because when they hear on the news derivatives crisis, or there's a problem with the derivatives, I think that's going to be a key indicator that we're about to see some huge problems in the financial markets. Because what we are seeing today has never been repeated before in our history. Over the past couple of decades, Wall Street has become the biggest casino in the entire world. And some of the numbers I'm about to tell you are absolutely incredible, and they're hard to believe. But according to the U.S. government, these are government figures, the top 25 banks in the United States have exposure to derivatives that totals more than $212 trillion. Now, keep in mind, U.S. GDP for a year is only $15 trillion.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about $212 trillion, and those same banks, they only have assets of combined assets of $8.9 trillion. So the ratio of exposure to derivatives to total assets is approximately 24-1. So when this bubble crashes, there's no way there's going to be enough money to clean it up.
Oh, Michael, mundane details. Come on. It'll never happen. That's all you ever hear all the time. Oh, you guys, you're just fear-mongerers. You're just conspiracy theorists. Come on, that would never happen. And folks, let me tell you something. The stark reality is it most certainly can happen. It has happened in the past. We witnessed it in 2007 on a very small scale. But if a derivatives bubble pops, the scale isn't going to be as small. When we come back, we'll have much more with Michael Snyder of the economiccolappseblog.com when the Freedom Link returns, right here on Unbound Radio. Don't go away.
I thought that yesterday was a bad day, so I took my time to figure.
Get ready for the epic new documentary adventure ride of your life. Shade the motion picture. A view into the globalist domain. An embellished and brilliant film.
Nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does.
We have let them know that their world government has been identified, and they thought they'd include the world economy to bring in a worldwide police state, but instead it's going to bring them down.
You have to stand up, speak up, speak out.
Shade the motion picture. Order your copy of the DVD today at shadethemotionpicture.com.
Are chemtrail geoengineering programs changing our weather and destroying our environment? Why in the world are they spraying?
They want to create a storm in the southeast, then they'll start engineering out over the North Pacific. That's where the trailies will be.
Find out why critics are calling Why in the World Are They Spraying the most important film that is revolutionizing the environmental movement. Go to whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com for more information.
It's just going to get worse until the point where we're not going to be able to grow anything at all unless it's a Monsanto genetically modified abiotic stress resistant seed.
Why in the World Are They Spraying? New international version with languages available from around the world. Go to whyintheworldaretheyspraying.com for more information.
It's all about money, and weather is another form of commoditizing, a way the Central Command Group can commoditize another form of our life.
Why in the world are they spraying?
And if you control the weather, you're going to control the planet. It's that simple.
IntelliHub.com, just the website you were looking for to get all of your news from. Whether it be health, science, geopolitics, globalism, depopulation, or the ever-increasing police state, IntelliHub.com covers it all. You can expect top-of-the-line daily reports from our reporters and journalists, such as Avalon, JG Vibes, Shepard Ambellis, Derek Bros, Servano Gonzalez, and more. Check out IntelliHub.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Intelligence Hub. IntelliHub.com.
Fearless, provocative, boundless talk radio all the time. Unbound Radio.
Folks, don't forget to check out our social media pages such as Facebook and Twitter. You can like us, tweet us, all just by clicking the Facebook and Twitter widgets on the Unbound Radio homepage. The biggest fear that the global gangsters have is the truth, so help us spread it far and wide by linking to us through our social media pages. And thank you for helping make Unbound Radio one of the fastest-growing talk radio outlets. Joe Joseph here, along with John King, our special guest, Michael Snyder from the economiccollapseblog.com. And before the break, we were talking about the derivatives bubble and the fact that our exposure to derivatives just in the United States alone is over $200 trillion, when our GDP is $15 trillion and bank assets in the United States total $8.9 trillion. Michael, you were talking about it, a 24-to-1 ratio. It's funny because we, the people, we allow this to happen. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that these banks are allowed to do what they do and go about what they do unchecked?
Well, part of the problem is the way that our system is set up. Today, in the United States today, the candidate that raises more money wins almost all the time in national elections. So our politicians know that their survival primarily depends on being able to raise money. And so they're very good to the people that have lots of money and that give them lots of money, which tend to be the banks, the corporations, those that are wealthy and so forth. And then we've got this revolving door between Washington, D.C. and Wall Street where, people come, serve in the government, then they go back to the big Wall Street banks. And so we've got this system which is kind of, just feed the cycle, which just feeds on itself. And so our politicians kind of just let Wall Street do whatever it wants, hands off. And Wall Street has just kind of been consumed by this atmosphere and this culture of greed, which has just kind of gotten out of control. And so we instead of learning our lessons from 2008, we should have learned, because why did AIG almost collapse? The biggest insurance company in the United States, why did it collapse? Well, it wasn't because they wrote a bunch of bad life insurance policies. It was because of derivatives.
Right.
So, people should have learned that, hey, these are a real problem. They can collapse our financial system. But instead, we saw a half-hearted attempt at financial reform. It was so watered down that it's basically meaningless. Nothing was done. And so none of the problems were fixed. And so here they come again. And it's going to be a lot worse this next time, I'm afraid.
That's right. In this recovery, if you will. I mean, because I don't know about you, Michael, but I just feel recovery everywhere I go. I mean, it's just great. The sun's shining down on me, let me tell you. And and of course I'm being facetious because everywhere you look, there's no recovery. Whether you look in the housing sector, I know I just saw a stat that the home improvement the spending in home improvements is down to 2010 levels. That wages are down to 1995 levels, but inflation certainly isn't at 1995 levels. So how do you have a recovery when all of these dynamics are in place?
Oh, it's true. This recovery there's been no real recovery, especially for the bottom 90% of Americans. You look at home ownership levels. They've kept on declining. In fact, they are now at their lowest level in 18 years. The only reason the housing market is not completely collapsed is because investors are jumping in. Investors are the ones buying the homes, but actually a smaller percentage of Americans own homes than back during the recession. Or you look at employment. Prior to the last recession, the employment to population ratio, in other words, the percentage of working age Americans that actually had a job, was about 63%. Then during the recession, it fell from 63% all the way below 59%, and it has stayed below 59% for 44 months in a row. The media is so excited about the latest jobs numbers and whatever, but in fact, in this April, a smaller percentage of Americans actually had a job than 3 years ago. So we haven't actually had an employment recovery at all.
Wow. Folks, I'll tell you what, we're gonna go to break now, and we'll hit our long segment coming up after these messages, and we'll talk more about the, quote, recovery, unquote, when the Freedom Link returns with Michael Snyder of theeconomiccollapseblog.com right here on Unbound Radio. Don't go away.
For hundreds of years, an elite group of oligarchs have ruled the land, fueled by a legacy of sex, money, power and greed. In the last 60 years, their power has become more consolidated as they have become more organised. Their own white papers and other documents show the diabolic plans they have in store for the population. Shade, the motion picture. Order your copy of the DVD today. ShadeTheMotionPicture.com.
We all know the importance of having storable foods, but what about when the food runs out? What then? For real food independence, you need a supply of non-hybrid seeds. Introducing the Survival Seed Vault from MyPatriotSupply.com. The Survival Seed Vault is sealed for freshness and includes 20 varieties of easy-to-grow non-hybrid seeds for only $37.95. For less than $40, you've got real food independence, and the Survival Seed Vault includes detailed planting and seed-saving instructions. Imagine the barter power you'll have when the food supply does collapse. Right now, save $9 instantly when you buy 3 or more Survival Seed Vaults from MyPatriotSupply.com. Same-day shipping on all orders, plus free shipping on orders over $49. Call 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927. Or discover more emergency preparedness products at MyPatriotSupply.com. That's MyPatriotSupply.com.
Get ready for the epic new documentary adventure ride of your life. Shade, the motion picture. A view into the globalist domain. An Embellis and Burma's film.
Nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does.
We are going to let them know that their world government has been identified, and they thought they'd include the world economy to bring in a worldwide police state, but instead it's going to bring them down.
You have to stand up, speak up, speak out.
Shade, the motion picture. Order your copy of the DVD today at ShadeTheMotionPicture.com.
IntelliHub.com, just the website you were looking for to get all of your news from. Whether it be health, science, geopolitics, globalism, depopulation, or the ever-increasing police state, IntelliHub.com covers it all. You can expect top-of-the-line daily reports from our reporters and journalists, such as Avalon, JG Vibes, Shepard Ambellis, Derek Bros, Servano Gonzalez, and more. Check out IntelliHub.com. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Intelligence Hub. IntelliHub.com.
Did you know that you don't have to be in front of your computer to listen to Unbound Radio? Now you can listen to Unbound Radio on your smartphone. Just download the TuneIn app at your Google or Apple store and do a search for Unbound Radio. Save us as a preset, and you can take Unbound Radio with you anytime, anywhere. Unbound Radio on TuneIn, your source for truth in a society of lies.
Dominating mainline funded lies and propaganda with truth, knowledge, and perseverance. Unbound Radio. Educate your mind.
Welcome back, folks. If you want want the inside story on really happened, take a trip down the rabbit hole with Popeye Monday to Friday from 10 p.m. to midnight. The most compelling 2 hours in radio, guaranteed to show you a side of the Matrix that you never knew existed. That's Down the Rabbit Hole with Popeye right here on Unbound Radio. And folks, tonight, his special guest is Professor James Tracy. You guys may remember him on CNN, the Professor Conspiracy, as he calls it the way he sees it and teaches it that way down at a Florida university. So Popeye, I'll have him on the broadcast, 10 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you stay tuned as the great programming on Unbound Radio continues. And it's going on right now with our special guest, Michael Snyder of the economiccollapseblog.com. And folks, I can't say this enough to check out Michael's new book, The Beginning of the End, his first fiction novel. But again, you know, one that kind of melds fiction with fact. And what a great way of trying to convince your loved ones or your friends or your coworkers of the stark realities of the days that we live in. So if you're thinking of any special gifts, check it out, The Beginning of the End by Michael Snyder. So great to have you here, Michael. And we're talking about the recovery and just how much we don't feel it, even though it's shoved down our throat. Why? The recovery is still going strong. Like, for example, the numbers from the Bureau of Economic Statistics came out. We have 2.5% growth this quarter. Oh, really? We do? John King, do you feel that 2.5% growth?
No, because it's getting ate up by the rising inflation.
Yeah.
So there is no economic recovery. I think when they talk about recovery, they're talking about the banks and the global elite recovering the land of the United States back to pre-1776 ownership. They're recovering their property and taking it back from the people. There's no economic recovery. Come on.
Well, Michael, what do you think about that? Do you see, I see this as an enormous transfer of wealth. How do you see it?
Well, it is a transfer of wealth where the wealthy are the only group that's doing good, while the most of the country is really hurting. In fact, according to the Pew Research Center, at this point, the top 7% of all U.S. households own 63% of all the wealth. In fact, and we continue to see this trend accelerate in recent years. In fact, between 2009 and 2011, the bottom 93% of the entire country, their wealth decreased by 4%, while the top 7% it increased by 28%. And so we are seeing this separation between the wealthy and the rest of us continue to grow. And that's going to have huge implications for the future, because people are becoming very angry, very frustrated. They can't take their care of their families. Government dependence is at an all-time high. We've seen the number of Americans on food stamps go from 32 million to 47 million while Barack Obama's been in office. This has supposedly been during a time of economic recovery.
Yeah, and over 10 million on Social Security disability, too. I mean, it's an amazing amount of government dependency. And to me, when you see 2.5% growth, to me, that's all government fueled as far as I'm concerned. Because without that government fueling of the economy, we'd have crashed a long time ago. We'd have crashed and burned. And also, what a lot of people fail to realize, I know I realize it, is all the jobs that we have shipped overseas, especially when it comes to our manufacturing sector. We're no longer a producing economy. Now we're a service-based economy. And I just don't see how you can have sustained growth when you're a service-based economy. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree 100%. And so we've seen these high-quality, good-paying manufacturing jobs that once fueled our thriving middle class being shipped overseas. In fact, since 2001, we have seen 56,000 manufacturing facilities in the United States shut down. And, of course, most of that activity has gone to places like China and other places on the other side of the world where it's legal to pay slave labor wages. And so the big corporations are saying, hey, we could pay American workers $10, $15, $20 an hour plus benefits, plus Obamacare, plus everything else. Or we can go to the other side of the world and make our stuff and pay people $1 an hour or less with no benefits. How can American workers compare with that? And so we've seen entire regions of the country basically totally wiped out. In fact, between December in the year 2000 and December 2010, 48% of all the manufacturing jobs in the state of Michigan were lost. And so you go to places like Detroit today, they're virtual wastelands. Oh. In fact, in the city of Detroit today, there are approximately 70,000 abandoned buildings, and at this point, approximately 1/3 of the Detroit's 130 square miles are either vacant or derelict right now.
Unbelievable. Now, John, you experienced that firsthand, didn't you?
Yes, I did, Joe. It's not a pretty picture either. I can tell you that much.
No, I know. Now, of course, John comes from the steel manufacturing industry, and the steel sector got decimated too with all the manufacturing jobs getting shipped overseas to China, and Vietnam is another big emerging economy over there. A lot of places a lot of companies moving their manufacturing over there. The other thing that I've found, Michael, that is very interesting, and I'd like to get your thoughts about it because I don't think I've seen you write about it yet, is the prison industrial complex and how that all plays into things too, because you have to think 25 cents an hour is not a bad wage if you're a private prison that is pumping all these products out. I mean, I don't even think you can get that cheap a labor in Vietnam or China.
Oh, it's very true. And so we are seeing big corporations are investing in this private prison industry, because in a lot of these states, they've put together these private prisons. And in fact, it's grown to the point where today approximately 130,000 people are locked up in these private prisons. And it's rapidly growing as prisons all over the country are privatized. And that just gives these companies incentive to lobby their state lawmakers to make even harsher laws to get even more people behind bars. And so today, the United States has about 5% of the total global population, but we've got 25% of the entire global prison population. And so it's such a shame. It's such a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Where we've seen the U.S. prison population more than quadruple between 1980 and 2007, and now they're using much of this incarcerated population to take jobs away from the rest of us.
Absolutely. And what's even more troubling is the fact that here we go and we criticize China for their forced labor camps. Yet what's the difference between China's forced labor camps and our prison industrial complex? Because, okay, they're labeled two different things, but they're the same thing, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I have a list of some of the companies here that are taking advantage of this prison labor. Companies like IBM, Boeing, Microsoft, AT&T, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, Revlon, Macy's, Pierre Cardin, Target. Those are some of the biggest names in our economy, but they've all jumped into this private prison workforce, and it's not right. But meanwhile, the rest of us are scrambling, looking for jobs. We've got a quarter of the entire workforce in this country that's working for $10 an hour or less, and you can't support a family on that. And the truth is, there's not enough jobs for all of us. People are amazed when I tell them this statistic. In the United States today, there are more than 101 working age Americans that do not have a job, that absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, I know. I just, it's very troubling. I mean, where we're at as a country and as a society is very troubling because we've gone so far away from the founding fathers' intentions and what the framework of this country was, what the foundation was. Now we're more of we're not more of, we are a socialist society. I mean, if you take a look, the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto are firmly entrenched here in the United States and throughout much of the Western world. And it harkens me back. I don't know how much you've dove into the into history and like the work of Adam Weishaupt and all the goals laid out. Well, that's where Karl Marx kind of got his ideas, was from Adam Weishaupt, who just so happened to be a good buddy, a fist pump with Lord Amschel Rothschild. So, and then, when people hear that, they're like, you're crazy. Yeah, take that tinfoil hat off already. But that's the truth of the matter. And the only way that we as a country or a people or, the world in general can come to grips with this and actually fix it is if we accept the problem. Isn't that right, Michael?
Oh, absolutely. But instead, those of us that are trying to bring awareness are being portrayed as the enemy, as the problem, as Barack Obama said in his speech the other time. But, that's why I try to point out to people, bring them back to the Founding Fathers. Because today what you have, the Democrats are saying, give more power to the big government. And the Republicans are saying, give more power to the big corporations. Well, our Founding Fathers were very suspicious of concentrations of power in any form, whether it be government or corporate. They wanted a very limited central government. And in early America, corporations were greatly restricted in size and scope. They were only allowed for certain purposes and for a certain amount of time. And because what they wanted, the Founding Fathers wanted the balance of power to be toward the people. And that's what I would like to see today. Because the rules of the game have greatly shifted in the favor of big government and the big corporations. I would like to see a shift of power back to the people and small businesses and back to the community level, because I think we've tremendously gotten away from that.
Bev Harris of blackboxvoting.org has, over the past 10 years or so, done some great activism exposing the corruption in the voting system, especially in regards to these new electronic voting machines. Mm-hmm. How do people in the United States make change or get their justice or get the people that they want in their office if the voting process is so corrupt, Michael? What do they have to do?
Well, it's incredibly difficult because, for example, with the last election, I tried to raise some issues regarding, the voting irregularities that we saw, but we heard nothing about it from the mainstream media, and that's the problem. Today, in the United States today, there are basically six the gigantic corporate conglomerates that control about 90% of all the media that comes out, whether it's music, books, television, movies, video games, whatever it is. These six behemoths dominate, and Americans are so plugged into it. For example, the average American watches approximately 153 hours of television a month. And that's an enormous amount of propaganda because they don't call it programming for nothing. So to be able to break out of that matrix and start thinking for yourself, because don't take anything I say or you say or anyone else, it's imperative that people start doing their own research and thinking for themselves and to stop letting the media or anyone else do their thinking for them. So, what I'm trying to do, what you're trying to do, what so many are trying to do in the alternative media is to get people to break out of the matrix, to start thinking for themselves. Because, that's why we kind of call it waking up. We want to wake people up because if they stay plugged into this matrix, this propaganda that they're constantly being fed, they're not going to have any chance at all.
No, you're absolutely right about that. 100%. And folks, the final segment of the broadcast is coming up with Michael Snyder of the economiccollapseblog.com, so don't go away. When we come back, I'm going to get his thoughts about Adam Kokesh and the July 4th Armed March on D.C. Don't go away.
For hundreds of years, an elite group of oligarchs have ruled the land, fueled by a legacy of sex, money, power and greed. In the last 60 years, their power has become more consolidated as they have become more organised. Their own white papers and other documents show the diabolic plans they have in store for the population. Shade, the motion picture. Order your copy of the DVD today. ShadeTheMotionPicture.com.
In an emergency situation, would you drink contaminated water? You could if you had the amazing LifeStraw from MyPatriotSupply.com. LifeStraw is the most advanced personal water filter available today. It filters contaminated water from almost any source. LifeStraw is lightweight and compact, perfect for hiking, camping, or in an emergency like a flood. LifeStraw is easy to clean, comes with a 1-year warranty, and has been used worldwide since 2005. Get the amazing LifeStraw personal water filter at MyPatriotSupply.com. Plus, check out Survival Seed Vault, 20 seed varieties for only $37.95, Tatler canning lids, long-term storable foods as low as $69.95, and much more at MyPatriotSupply.com. Enjoy stress-free shipping on all orders over $49. Call 866-229-0927 or visit MyPatriotSupply.com. That's 866-229-0927. MyPatriotSupply.com for emergency preparedness, self-reliance, and food independence.
Get ready for the epic new documentary adventure ride of your life. Shade, the motion picture. Hub you into the globalist domain and embellish and burnish film.
Nothing in this world works the way you think it does. Nothing. Governments do not operate the way you think they do. Banks do not do what you think they do. The police department is not here for what you think it is. Nothing in your world works the way you think it does.
We are here to let them know that their world government has been identified, and they thought they'd implode the world economy to bring in a worldwide police state, but instead it's going to bring them down.
You have to stand up, speak out.
Shade the motion picture. Order your copy of the DVD today at ShadeTheMotionPicture.com.
Did you know that you don't have to be in front of your computer to listen to Unbound Radio? Now you can listen to Unbound Radio on your smartphone. Just download the TuneIn app at your Google or Apple store and do a search for Unbound Radio. Save us as a preset, and you can take Unbound Radio with you anytime, anywhere. Unbound Radio on TuneIn, your source for truth in a society of lies.
Spread the love. Tell a friend about the network. Unbound Radio.
For one of the most dynamic personalities in the independent media and a hard-hitting broadcast that exposes the corrupt and nefarious forces that seek to loot and plunder the people of the world, tune into the Change the Channel show with my good buddy Kenneth Webb, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, exclusively here on Unbound Radio. Joe Joseph and John King here with our special guest, Michael Snyder from the EconomicCollapseBlog.com. We're wrapping up this conversation tonight. Johnny boy, it's been a fantastic night of radio, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. This show goes down with one of our better ones.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Michael, one last thing, and this is off the economy, but Adam Kokesh recently came out and announced that he's going to hold an armed march on Washington, D.C., July 4th. And I've already come out and said, and I will continue to say, that is a very, very bad idea. Now, I'm all for protest, and I'm all for civil disobedience and not consenting to things, but to do so in an armed march fashion and marching on Washington with loaded weapons kind of opens you up for a lot of trouble, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, I'm like you. I'm all in favor of people taking a stand and making themselves known and trying to do something to bring about change. But if you get just a huge, massive gathering of armed Americans marching on Washington, it just provides so many opportunities for something to go wrong, whether it's a hothead getting upset and firing off his weapon or the feds sneaking in some provocateurs and doing something. You know, it just gives the Obama administration the perfect opportunity to demonize gun owners, to create an incident for an incident to happen, and then all of a sudden, gun owners, there's a real good reason for them to crack down on gun owners. I just think the potential harm is so much greater than the potential good out of this. So I don't think this is the right move, unfortunately.
No, I agree. And here's the other thing too. In the District of Columbia, the citizens of the District of Columbia are staunchly against open carry and, for the most part, gun ownership. They are more of the anti-gun type. They just are. That's the way they are. And my thing is look, if you want guns and you want the Second Amendment, the District of Columbia is not the place you want to go, because that technically is its own little nation state. Yeah, that's the last place you want to go and have an armed march. You want to do it down in Texas, knock yourself out. D.C., ooh, I don't think so. That's not so good. And to me, it seems to. I don't think there's any ill intent on his part. I think his intentions are genuine, but it seems to me it'd be a little bit, I hate to say irresponsible, but more along the lines of not well thought out, and so my issue here is simply it exposes too many people to the fact that you could have a provocateur and that you could have a potential incident occur in that type of scenario. So, I think we're in agreement here that it could get kind of hairy. Now, Michael, in the last 2 minutes or so, we got just a little over 2 minutes left. First, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the broadcast tonight, because this has been a very riveting conversation, not just to highlight the problems that we face in America and the dire economic situation that we have here, but it also puts things in perspective for the common folk to do things outside of what the mainstream media tells you to prepare for these uncertain times. So I want to personally thank you for all the work you've done on the Economic Collapse blog and all your other sites and your new book, because you, sir, are really, truly making a difference, and we'd be glad to have you back here at any time. Is there anything that you'd like to plug in about the last minute and a half?
Sure, absolutely. I just wanted to plug a little bit my new book. It just came out this week. It's called The Beginning of the End, and it's available on Amazon.com. Right now, it's just available in ebook format. In about 2 weeks, it'll be out in paperback format. So I hope people read it and enjoy it, but then also I hope people use it as a tool, because I've included, if I was going to write an economic collapse book, there's so much of that information I put into the novel, but it's a few nuggets in this chapter, a few nuggets in that chapter. And hopefully people use it as a tool where they can give it to a friend or neighbor who maybe they can't sit down with and have an hour-long conversation about these things, but you can give them a book and it'll download truth into them, hopefully wake them up. And so that's what I'm really trying to shoot for with the book.
Fantastic, Michael. Well, thank you for coming on the broadcast tonight. It has been a pleasure for sure. Folks, coming up on Thursday, our special guest is Joe Bannister, former IRS agent. We'll be talking specifically about, is there a law that requires you to pay income tax? Very, very good conversation to have with Joe Bannister, and I hope everybody joins me on Thursday. We'll be back again Wednesday, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, everybody.